Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life, and whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. A great promise of hope today that we have from Jesus Christ. And I consider it a great honor to be able to be a part of this ceremony. Sister Larsen was such a fantastic lady, and what a great influence she had upon my wife and I, and of course this entire congregation. She was one of our church mothers, and she's going to be greatly missed. I'd like to take this opportunity just to say to all of the family and to the friends, on behalf of Crystal, myself, and the entire pastoral staff and congregation of Sunset Church, our deepest and heartfelt sympathies are with you, and our prayers are with you during this time. But we know this is not goodbye. This is until we meet again. We will see her again someday, and what a great hope that will be. And just going to share one of our favorite chapters here in just a moment, Psalms 121. But just before we do that, the passing of Fayetta de Larsen, Parkside Drive, Fredericton, New Brunswick, occurred at the Dr. Everett Chalmers Regional Hospital on Sunday, September 1st, 2002. She was born in Meadville, Pennsylvania, and spent 30 years as a missionary in Colombia, South America. After leaving Colombia, she spent 20 years in Montreal and has lived the final 6 years of her life in Fredericton. She is survived by one daughter, Abby Kierstead, and husband Lloyd in Plaster Rock, New Brunswick, 3 sons, Keith Larsen and wife Alva of Connecticut, Caleb Larsen, his wife Linda of Texas, Dwight Larsen, his wife Irva of Fredericton, 16 grandchildren and 25 great-grandchildren, as well as 1 sister, Norma Jean Messard of Ohio, and 1 brother, Dale Bernard of Massachusetts. In addition to her parents, she was predeceased by her husband, Reverend A.V. Larsen, 1 daughter, Laverne Torres, 1 daughter-in-law, Naomi Larsen, 1 great-grandson, David Torres, as well as 2 brothers, Lloyd and Oliver Bernard. So, such a tremendous family, and she's touched many people. And I remember from the visits with Sister Larsen in her home and at the hospital, there's so many instances that I could remember and recall, but you're going to hear many stories here today, so I'm not going to share a long time, but there's one story that stands out in my mind. Because, of course, the work that I'm involved in here at Sunset Church is with the First Nations people. And I remember her telling me this story in the hospital. She said, Pastor Richard, she said, when I came to Fredericton 6 years ago, it was around Christmas time, remember our first Christmas, I got Dwight to drive me up through St. Mary's to see the lights. She said, I went up to see the lights on the First Nation community. And she said, I'll never forget that incident, she said. So because when I came home that night, she said, I felt like I really wasn't at home. My heart was still in Montreal. And she said, when I came home to my apartment, she said, I could hear the beating of a drum in my ear. She said, I could hear the Maliseet language. And she said, from that night forward, it was Christmas Eve, I believe, she said, I started praying for the Maliseet people, and that God would raise up a work amongst the First Nations people here in Brunswick. And to the glory of God, Sister Larsen's prayer has begun to be answered, and lives are being touched in the First Nations community. And we have a body of believers now at St. Mary's and some in Kingsclear, Ormond, and Woodstock, largely in part because there was a lady that had a missionary's heart and prayed. And there's something about Sister Larsen that lives on today. That's her prayers, and the prayers for those people. And I know on behalf of First Nations Christian Outreach, they wanted me to say today that their prayers are with the family as well. And Sister Larsen will be greatly missed. So God bless you, and God bless her memory today. I'm going to read her favorite chapter. Dwight told me this in visiting with him at the hospital, that she loved this chapter and read it often. It's in the bulletin, Psalms 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, even forevermore. And Sister Larsen knew what it was like to be preserved in her coming in as well as in her going out. Let us pray together. Father, I thank you for the comfort that we can have today. Though we have lost a dearly beloved sister, a prayer warrior, a mother of this assembly, Lord, we know that she's not gone forever, but we will see her again. And Lord, we are so thankful for the labor that she committed to you, the time that she had spent talking to you. And Lord, we thank you for her memory today. We thank you for the person that she was. And Lord, I pray that her life will be an inspiration to all of us to serve you with all of our hearts, our mind, our soul, and our strength. Lord, I pray that the heartbeat in Sister Larsen for souls would be all of our heartbeat. That, Father, we would have the passion that she had to see many people come to know you. And Lord, I pray that the intercession that she had, that mantle will be picked up by many others in this city. That, Lord, they would begin to carry that torch. And Father, I pray today especially you bring comfort to the family. I pray you wrap your loving arms about them, to the friends, Lord. I pray you would provide such courage and strength during this time. And we thank you for your promises, and we thank you, Lord, for allowing us to have encountered Sister Larsen. I thank you personally for the mark that she has made on my life. And Lord, once again, we just ask you to bless this service. Let your perfect will be done. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. God bless you. The granddaughters are going to come at this time and sing a song.
What a heritage, eh? Sister Larsen, where do we start? They have asked me to talk about some of the lighter sides of Sister Larsen. And the first time I met Sister Larsen was in 1969 at the Bible school. And she had come in, they were coming into the Bible school and coming down the stairs. And everybody was singing, "Quebec for Jesus, this the battle cry. Quebec for Jesus, we'll fight until we die." Little did I know at that time how much I would be in the battle in Montreal. That year they stayed in the Bible school, in the apartment behind the auditorium. And every night about 11 o'clock, the lights were all out and everybody was quietly in bed. And you'd hear this little pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter. And this little scuff, 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 scuff down the hall. Everything was quiet. We'd say, "There goes our little robot." They'd just wind her up and she would just go. She moved to Montreal, and when I was there in my third year of my Bible school, we met again. And in June of 72, in January of 72, I moved up there. And that year was hard because Brother Larsen was so sick, and Brother Gerald and Urbany and Brother Fontaine, Maisie are here to witness that. It was a hard time. We were in the heat of the battle, and there were many nights in prayers. And every morning when we would finish praying, we'd go over to the Mr. Donut shop, and that poor lady must have thought that we had really been in a battle, because we had been praying all night, and we were in a battle. We were in a spiritual battle. And as she waited and she cared for Brother Larsen, she was still scuffing along. She'd just scuff up and down the hall and up and down the hall, and finally Brother Larsen said to her one day, "Mom," he said, "do you think you could get some shoes that don't make quite so much noise?" After Brother Larsen passed away, exactly 30 years to this month, I took up residence with Sister Larsen. And that was quite an experience. You know, they say that you have to live with a person to know them. Well, I did. We had some good times together, and we had some sad times together. And she was feeling very lonesome at that time, and every day we would have to go to the graveyard. Every single day, like for 3 months, I think. So finally, she came out one day and she said, "Wouldn't this just be a lovely day to go to the graveyard?" And I said, "Yes, it would be a lovely day to go, but we're not going." And she just said, "Okay, well, I guess I can't go every day." But she would sit at the table, and she'd feel very lonesome because she had spent many years by the side of this man, and she'd sit there and the tears would fall, and I would come and sit beside her at the table, and I would do some foolishness. I'd tell some kind of a joke or something, and before you know it, she'd be laughing so hard. You know, Sister Larsen would laugh hard. Many times a day we would do that, and she has often said, you know, she said, if it wasn't for those times of laughter that we had around that table, she said, I don't know how I would have made it. And of course, you know, Sister Larsen comes alive at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Dwight said the other day, he said her day starts at 4 o'clock. And when she was in Montreal, like in Montreal, everything closes around 5 o'clock. It's not like here in Fredericton. And so she'd always want to go to the post office. Every day she walked to the post office. And she would leave her house like about 4:15. So every day you'd see her little Red Riding Hood. She'd have her little red coat on and her little red tam. And she'd just be scuffing down to Carey Street trying to get to the post office before it closed. But she liked to just be on the nick of time, I guess. But she used to, when the rest of the world was going to sleep, Larsen was just getting ready to start her day. About 9 or 10 o'clock at night, the typewriter would come out, or the sewing machine would come out, or whatever. So this was quite getting accustomed. And where we lived in the apartment in Montreal, there was only one window to the outside world, and that was in Sister Larsen's room. So, you know, like she would go to bed at whatever, 1 or 2 o'clock, and then you wouldn't get to sleep either until she did, and then you'd wake up in the morning at all hours, you know, because you didn't know whether it was day or night, because there was no lights, no sun, no anything. So it took a while to get back on schedule again. When Brother Larsen was sick, Sister Larsen decided that she would get her driver's license. And she was 61 years old at the time, and she had white hair. And you know, I thought she was old, maybe in my 20s. I thought she was quite old. But now, as I reflect back now, she wasn't so old after all. But I'll never forget the first drive she took me on. Now I think of it with humor, but then I thought of it with horror. We come out of the house and we got in the car, and I don't know if any of you have ever driven in Montreal, but it's a challenge. And so she came out and she said, we're going to go down to St. Catherine Street. Now this is the busy street in Montreal. And we're going to go to the Red Cross and get something that Brother Larsen needs. So I said, okay, we'll go. So she got in the car behind the driver's seat, and I got in the passenger side. Well, we started out now from her place to the end of the corner where the stop sign is like from here to the road maybe. Well, I think by the time we got to the stop sign, we were going 40 miles an hour for sure, I'm telling you. And we stopped real quick, and I said, Sister Larsen, there's a bicycle coming. Oh, that's okay. She said, he has to wait for me. I'm going. Then we went around the corner to the second stop sign, and we were back up to 30 again, I'm sure. So at that time, I started maybe saying a little prayer here. And so she said, well, now, you know, I've never driven on the expressway before. So she said, you're going to have to help me. So I said, okay. So she said, you watch the back and watch the front, and when you tell me to go over, I'll just go over. So I said, okay. So she drove right on, and I was watching the back, and I said, okay, let's go. And over she'd go. So anyway, we did get down there, and we did get back, but it was quite a challenge, I'll tell you. So after a while, I said to Dwight, I think you better take this car back to New Brunswick with you, because if you don't, your mother's going to be dead, and maybe many others along with them. So that ended up her driving career, I would say. And then she went to buses and metros, and she went rain, shine, snow, sleet. It didn't matter. She was everything. And so anytime she would say, you know, I don't feel like I'm doing anything here in Montreal, you know, now that Brother Larsen was gone. But one thing she did was gave a testimony of commitment and faithfulness. And Brother Mattel is here today, and he can say that this is true, that to many of the newcomers and the new followers in Montreal, they looked to Sister Larsen for faithfulness because she was always there. Then she came down here and she graduated from the buses and the metros to her Cadillac. You know what her Cadillac was? It was her walker. So one day she decided she wasn't going to you weren't going to keep her down. I mean, she was going to go. So one day she decided she'd go out in the walker, and she was going to go, I don't know, to the mall or wherever. But anyway, she started out, and always thinking ahead, Sister Larsen took her lunch with her. And so she went out this day, and she got across Montgomery, and she just absolutely got lost. She didn't know where she was going. So she just stopped this little walker, put the brakes on, and it's very convenient because it has a seat on it also. So she just took out her little lunch, and she just sat by the side of the road, and she just ate her lunch, and then she went on. I guess she must have found her way back home. Anyway, she was gonna go anyway. But Sister Larsen went to Columbia, in, I believe it was 1973. And she came back early in her trip, and she said, I heard you were going to get married. And she said, are you sure this is what you really want to do? And I said, yes, this is what I want to do. And she said, well, you know, I cut my visit short in Columbia to come back here and check on you, you know. And I said, well, that was very nice of you to do that, but it was really kind of a waste of time. But anyway, she told me years after, she said that I guess the Lord knew exactly what he was doing. So we have a lot of experiences with Sister Larsen. We had a 911 episode with her one day. She called me up on the phone. She said, I'm feeling so terrible, and she said, I can't breathe very much. And I said, well, I'm babysitting and I can't come, but I said, I'll tell you what to do. You go unlock the door, you go lay on the couch and keep the phone right beside you. And I said, I'll get the paramedics to come. So I called Brother Fontalvo and Rosie and different ones, and every 5 minutes I call back, how are you doing? Okay, okay, she said. So then finally they all came, and that was when she had her heart attack 6 years ago, and we thought we were going to lose her then, but she lived 6 years after that. I said to her one day, many times she would say to me, oh Sandra, come and visit me. She said, I need a good laugh. And so I would go over, and we would get laughing, and I don't know if you've seen Sister Larsen laugh, but she just put her head down like that, and her face would go just as red as a beet, and she would laugh so hard, and then she'd say, oh, I needed that. And she said to me one day, you know, she said, Sandra, she said, I don't think that Bernie and Brother Larsen are going to think I made it, because she said, I'm so long in coming. And anyway, she was going to go when the Lord told her to go. So the last time I was in to visit her, I went to leave, and I gave her a kiss, and I said, Sister Larsen, I love you. And she said, I know you do. And when she said that to me, I said, well, I must have done something right, because when you can love somebody and then they can turn around and say, I know you do, then you must have done something right. And Sister Larsen and I have gone back a long ways, and I'm going to miss her a lot, and she was a special lady.
For asking me to partake in this ceremony this afternoon. I appreciate it very much, as being a very close friend of Sister Larsen. And I'm going to try to at the airport in Barranquilla there to meet us. And I had never met either one of them. That is already, was already a beautiful church, and it still stands. I know it's been changed quite a bit since that, but they lived in the back part of some things, and so to us it wasn't anything too special. But as I look back and think of the troubles she went to, and then Sister Larsen said, I don't think you're going to get along very good with Gerald at this bus, because the people they put in, they had, she said, I think you should stay a few days here. She was trying to persuade us. A few days here to kind of get acquainted a little bit and then go over. But no, Brother Doss said, no, we're going to go. So we got here in the morning, and Brother Doss tried his very best to be calm. And Gerald was hungry, and I guess maybe I hadn't taken enough food for him on the trip, so we stopped at home. And so, by 2 or 3, and time. They were so emphatic because she wore high heels all the time. Mother Larsen would start the service because she never got there on time. Never in all of her life that I've known her has she ever been on time for anything, really on time. Well, that's not a bad trait in a way, but then it is in another way. But anyway, Mother Larsen would start the service, and he would sing without music because she played the piano. And so he would maybe have 10 or 15 minutes already started. He'd be up on the platform by the pulpit, and he'd trot just as fast as she could because she walked little tiny steps and real fast. And you would see the door open, and in she'd come, and she'd sit down to the piano real fast, and out she'd play because she'd catch on to the music right away quick. And that used to make me so, that would not make me laugh so much. I couldn't get over that. And we would go in the car with Mother Larsen somewhere, and he would be in the car. He would blow the horn. And he would blow it several, and then we'd go off wherever we had to go. But that was one of the traits that I have never forgotten. These little tiny steps. And she would walk so fast. Her apartment all this time since she came from Montreal. I was home on furlough. And she would insist that I would go over for a meal. Of course, she was really much better still. And she would insist that I would go over for the afternoon meal between 5 and 6. I said, all right, that's all right. I'll go over. Now, I have a custom to try to be there on time. Marguerite's here, and we always got to church on time or before the time. We never, ever were late, I don't think. So anyway, I would go over to her apartment. We'd have the meal. And down the street where I lived down further, it was quite dark in the first part. And then further down, it was a bit more lit up. And okay, that's fine. So I guess she felt that I was with the game. And she would walk about halfway down. And then I said, now, Sister Larsen, no more. You have to go back. I'm too far to the apartment. Well, we did this several times. But then I had her come to my apartment for a meal several times also. And I would call her on the phone. I would have everything ready. And I would come right now. Okay, I'll come right now. I knew that it would be a half an hour or maybe a little bit more. And we had a lovely time together each time. These are all things that I remember, but then I remember more, even still, the last few months. When I remember the times that we talked together to the Lord over the telephone. And then every Saturday, since I came home in May, help others. Her life was just given over to service. Challenge right to the very end. And even when I was informed of her passing to be with the Lord, I went around the room in my apartment with my hands raised the other day on Sunday. I said, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this lady. Thank you for the challenge that she has given me to walk on with God, to be all that I need to be before Him, because that's it, brother and sister, today. I'm going to miss her terribly. Terribly. I'm trying to cope with it. I know the Lord will help me. But one thing, the challenge is there. Let's walk with God. Let's take up the opportunity. There's a gap is there now. Her life, she's not here. There's a gap. I wonder who's going to fill that gap. Several, maybe young people, maybe her grandchildren. Just a young lady, when she first went to the mission field many years ago, single, and wanted to serve the Lord. You that are young, let that be a challenge for you today. Let God be first. Larsen has gone on to her reward. She's with the Lord. But somebody needs to fill that gap. Lord bless you.
I'm Jeannie. My dad is Keith Larsen. I'm going to read first for my two sisters, Judy and Kathy. I'll start with Judy. I have always admired my grandmother for her many years of dedicated missionary service in Colombia, Montreal, and her continued dedication during her last few years in Fredericton. When I was younger, we didn't see each other often, but as I grew older, we corresponded by letter. In later years, I came to know her on a more personal level. As my two children have grown up, they had formed a wonderful relationship with my Grammy, and look forward to visits with her, either in Connecticut or when we would return to Canada to see her. At a crossroads in my life, Grammy's wisdom, prayerful guidance, and tender loving care became a starting point for me. Grammy died when I was only 12, and I grew up thinking that he was looking down from heaven and protecting us. Now she'll be there with him, her suffering over and praises to share. I love you, Grammy. Larsen, I'm nervous. This is Kathy Larsen, Warner. Although we have all been preparing for this day, you can never anticipate just how you will be affected. This is truly a sad day when we have to say goodbye to such a devoted and loving woman. Grammy dedicated her entire life to helping others and to our Lord. She was always willing to lend a hand, and on many occasions went without others could have. She was a remarkable woman. Grammy are some of the most fond memories I have of her. Sharing time with her was a joy that I will miss terribly. Her loving smile and her kind words always made me feel better, even on a bad day. There is one memory of Grammy that has a special meaning to me, and I hold especially close to my heart. When I was a 10-year-old girl, I went to visit Grammy in Montreal. I remember boarding the plane all alone and being afraid. That fear soon turned to happiness when I saw Grammy's ear-to-ear smile as I exited the plane. I remember seeing how happy she was to see me. She gave me a huge hug, and I knew I was safe and with someone who loved me. Grammy and I spent an entire week together. She took me all around the city, and we had a wonderful time. Many of the things we did and the places we visited are still clear in my mind. Grammy, I love you dearly and will miss you forever. should have read that one last. I didn't write anything out. I just wanted to speak what I felt. Lots of people here have said how they have seen my grandmother. She's told when she was growing up in Montreal, I knew her more. Lately, I called her. He always did. She has done wonderful things in her life, things that the rest of us couldn't even imagine we could do. She has touched so many people. I think of all the people, she's touched us in her family the most. The stories, but I'll share is that when I was about 19 or 20, I forget, I was going through a particularly rough time, and my dad said, why don't you go see your grandmother in Montreal? So I got in the car, drove up, and
I'm Stephen, Abby's son, and I have a poem from my sister I'd like to read first. It says, Granny Larsen, Danish pastries, little trinkets, special treats, an ear to listen, wanting to serve me something to eat, a heart that loved to give and listen to me sing, believing in me, hoping a soul I might win. She gave all she had without hesitation. God is so good, a favorite exclamation. God had given her strength to live on her own, eat her favorite foods and be with those she had known. Her passion for souls sure do not dim, rejoicing in God's touch on her grandchildren. Her memory will live on because of her giving. She certainly exemplified really living. In loving memory, granddaughter Cindy Kirsten Kaiser. My brother was a little bit younger when we knew Grammy when we went to Montreal, but he didn't have something to write, but he said that he always remembered Grammy for always wanting to wait on everybody, and never wanted you to serve yourself, she wanted to serve you. Personally, I have many memories of my grandmother that I could mention. I remember her short legs, just a pumping as I struggled to keep up through the streets and subway passages of Montreal. I remember the fun she used to create at our house at Christmas time. I remembered how she wanted to kiss me, and I always thought I was too big and too boyish to be kissed. I remember how she fussed so much about making sure company was served just right. But these are not the main things that I remember about Grammy Larsen. Grammy was first, last, and always a missionary. And that is what I remember her and Grammy Larsen for. Grammy told me just 4 days before her stroke in August, I don't want my funeral to be sad. I want it to be missionary-minded. I'm not crying because I'm sad, but I have a hard time to see my paper right now. I can barely remember when my grandparents came home from Colombia, but I will remember many family trips we made to Montreal. I remember trips up Mount Royal at night, where as far as my young eyes could see in all directions were lights, lights, and more lights. My grandfather wanted us to see the vast millions of souls that were lost. I remember English church services at the church there where they would sing, yet there are untold millions still untold. Doesn't matter to you. I remember French services where Grammy and I would both struggle to follow the words in the little hymn book, in the language both of us were trying to learn, me in my childhood and her in her latter years. I remember vacation Bible school with the children that came in off the street. I remember song services and prayer meetings in the living room of my grandparents' house as we prayed for Grampy, who was dying in the next room. Then I'd hear Grampy cry out, pray for people for his name in Quebec. These are the earliest memories I had of my grandparents, and they are memories that affected my young life forever after. I had the privilege to take my family to visit Grammy this August, just 4 days before she had her stroke. I hope my children will never forget that visit. There she was, feebly sitting in her chair with a bandage on her forehead where she had fallen. Unable to service like she always wanted to do, she had a friend there, and she asked the friend to pass chocolates around the room. Then she began to tell us a story you already heard this afternoon. It's on my paper, so I'm going to read it anyway. Of a drive that my Uncle Dwight, had taken her on at Christmas time up to the Indian reservation to see all the pretty lights. She told us how after she'd got home and was in bed all alone, all she could hear was tom-toms beating. She said, I got such a burden for the Indians. Part of the night. Instead of complaining about how her life was ending up, she lay there that day and told us how blessed she was. She said, I can't get around anymore to help people, and it could start to get me down if I let it. But when I start to get discouraged, I just start praising the Lord. I have so much to praise Him for. These are the memories my children have of my grandmother. During that visit, less than 4 weeks ago, she reminded me of a time when she was visiting our home shortly after Grammy's death. My mother was having devotions with us children, and Grammy was sitting in on them. Mom asked us if any of us had a song we wanted to sing. I guess my heart was touched probably because Grammy was there, and I picked a consecrational song that Grammy had never heard before, but she never forgot it. And less than 4 weeks ago at Grammy's house here in Fredericton, her apartment, she reminded me of that day, of that song. And we sang it for her again that day in her apartment. I think it sums up Grammy's life better than anything else I could say today. Grammy lived this song, and here's what it says. I want to live the way you want me to live. I want to give until there's just no more to give. I want to love till there's just no more love. For I could never, never outlove the Lord.
That is in you, which dwelt first in your mother, grandmother, great-grandmother.
I'd just like to read first on behalf of my Uncle Caleb's daughter, Fayetta de Larsen. And she says this: although I was raised in Texas and didn't see my grandmother often, when I did see her, I always admired how unselfish she was. She never let me wait on her, but she insisted on cooking for my family, as well as helping with my children. The last time she did this, she was over 80 years old. She always wanted to help others in the way possible. My grandmother was an inspiration to me. Love your granddaughter, Fayetta de Larsen, right. And this is on behalf of my sister and I, Annie, and my name is Nick. We're the son of Dwight. We would like to give honor to our grandmother who raised a wonderful son, who was later to become our wonderful and caring father, Dwight. We saw our dad care for his mother with total commitment, knowing that she must have cared for him in the same manner during his younger years. This level of commitment they had for each other will be forever etched in my mind. We will certainly miss the warm welcome, the tight hand squeezes, and the joy she showed us when she visited us or we visited her. We will miss her at our Christmas table, Thanksgiving, and our Easter dinner table as well. She always had lots of stories to tell us about Columbia, and sometimes we heard them more than once. We feel that our lives have been give special protection because she brought us daily before our Heavenly Father. Our grandmother was real special in a kind of funny way. Even if we did do something bad, she never blamed it on us, but on all of our friends for the bad influence. And I guess in her eyes we were angels. That's what I call a good grandmother. Grammy, we will miss you, and we thank you for your prayers and your love. Penny and Nick.
Happy. And you feel that Christianity is worth living, and that you can be a Christian for years. She used to teach children on Saturdays, and I always saw her